Hey everyone, the Still Got It podcast is brought to you by Sutton Basketball Academy, where the next generation of hoopers are made. Whether you're just picking up a ball for the first time or chasing a college scholarship, our year-round academy trains boys and girls ages 5 through 18 to become peak performers both on and off the court. At Sutton Basketball Academy, it's bigger than the game. We build skills, confidence, and character that will last a lifetime. Learn more at SuttonBasketballAcademy.com. Hey everyone, welcome to the Still Got It podcast, where we sit down with former college hoopers to relive their journey, from playground dreams to big-time college moments and beyond. Each episode, we dig into players' early days in the game, the recruiting process, that first taste of life in college, and the highs and lows of their playing career. We'll also look at what came after the final buzzer, life beyond basketball, and where the game has taken them since. I'm your host, Nick Sutton, and this is Still Got It. Real stories, honest reflections, and a deeper look at the game beyond the box score. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, be sure to like and subscribe. Next time on Still Got It.
So then now we get to senior year. It kind of begins like junior year with you coming off the bench, but then comes the Maryland game. You get your first start of the season. You drop 16 and 17. You guys roll to a win, and you never come out of the starting lineup again. From the outside, that game kind of maybe felt like the moment you found exactly who you are as a player at Duke. Like, was that the case, or was it just, yeah, you got your opportunity and you grabbed the bull by the horns kind of thing?
I think a little bit of both. I think people don't realize how much confidence plays a factor in, the differences in results. And so, you can have two very similar skill set, or a guy that has a much better skill set is more athletic, but if he doesn't have the confidence and, that another guy does, he just doesn't make it to that next level. And, that played such a huge role in my career there, because, it felt like I was just such a shell of my former self, in comparison, most of my career at Duke. I mean, between the leg injuries and never being able to catch up and not knowing how to work them out properly and get back, I think I had 14 dunks in one game in high school. And I didn't have that in my entire career at Duke. And so, for me, it was just about slowly. I was never going to be the player I was in high school athletically after the injuries. But for me, it was, slowly building up that confidence to get, and so there was a game at BC. We're at BC, and a couple games before the Maryland game, or even the one right before, I forget. But I had never really been in the game at the end of the game. I wasn't really trusted on defense at that point, and/or to not foul, and, because I was, catching up on injuries. So I would, tend to get in foul trouble pretty easily. I wasn't great at free throws, because I wasn't in doing them regularly and/or shooting. And so, all that kind of left to the point where I wasn't in the game at the end of games. And so, I was a little bit more of a defensive liability on ball screens at times. So just not a good combo. But anyway, so I was playing well that game. I got the opportunity to be in at the end of the game, and I kind of either deflected or contested a shot at the end of the game that, made it so that we won. And, that kind of led into, oh, okay, I can do this, and I can have the confidence that you guys can trust me to be there, and I've learned enough, and I'm at the point physically where I can handle it. And so once I, had a couple good things happen, I just kept on trying to stack them. And, that game kind of came out of nowhere a little bit, but I had built up to that point. And after that, I had a conversation with Wojo where it was just like, you can't go back now. We're at the end of your career. You've had such a tough career. And I just simply decided that, that was who I was from then on. And that was more of a mental shift for me. Yeah. And, I had a little bit more confidence, and then it just kept stacking up more.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. And then senior night against UNC, you guys destroy them 82-50, one of the biggest blowouts in Duke UNC history. What do you remember most from your final game in Cameron?
I remember how fun it was and how together we felt I think we had gotten beat up by UNC for 3 years, and it was kind of a payback game where they didn't have the same players, and we were much better than we were the previous years. So, it was kind of the culmination of, oh, we found the right lineup that works for us, and we've gotten our confidence back. I remember the Georgetown game in front of Obama, where that year there was that game. There was the game at Wisconsin that all of a sudden something was missing and games would get away from us randomly. And so I felt like we had finally felt like we put it all together then. And that was a great feeling of, I hope the other guys felt this way, is like, once I got into the lineup, it was, oh, I feel really good about this. I feel really confident that everybody's, got each other's backs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and then that kind of, yeah, as you said, it seemed like you found your lineup. Maybe you were kind of peaking at the right time. And so going into the NCAA tournament, your senior year, Duke wasn't, they were a very high seed, but they weren't viewed as maybe a heavy favorite. But did you get the sense that you guys were peaking at the right time? And like, were there moments in practice or the ACC tournament where you guys thought like, all right, yeah, we are about to go on a run? Or was it, just a day by day thing?
I mean, we were trying to take it day by day. I do felt like we were all pretty excited about the fact that, where we were at the time, because it hadn't felt like that a lot of the other years. We had gotten there a little bit junior year, winning the ACC championship, and, so saw flashes of that. Obviously had a bad game against Villanova, in the Sweet 16 there, but we felt like we were better than that team, and it was just kind of taking it day by day. Because look, it was kind of that team was kind of fresh, considering the fact that I wasn't anywhere who I was until after that Maryland game, so it really wasn't that many games that we had together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then coming to the national championship game, I mean, you guys beat, I think, Purdue in the Sweet 16. Baylor in the Elite Eight, West Virginia in the Final Four, I believe. As you're waking up for the national championship game, what was your mindset? Were you kind of always locked and loaded, super laser focused? Were you kind of more like, all right, let's keep it relaxed, whatever? And however it usually was during a game, did it change for the national championship game, or was it kind of whatever your routine was for your whole career?
Yeah, it was different for me because I really hadn't been there that much. The other guys had started for a while, were pretty used to things. It was more of a newer experience for me, being one of the starters, which is a very different experience at Duke, being a starter versus not being a starter. And so I think I definitely prepared a little differently. I got to see more of the inner workings with guys, and I was having fun finally. For the first time in my career, I was having fun, and so I think that's what I enjoyed the most was, not feeling like I was a liability on the court, and that I was an important piece, and that I was part of it. I was a reason that we were succeeding,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then let's dive into that game. We're just going to fast forward to the last couple minutes. It was an instant classic, but Duke's up 60-55, 2 minutes to go. Butler has a ball. They do a screen and roll. Their big guy Howard finishes to cut it to 60-57. Next possession, Nolan Smith gets a great look right at the cup. Finger roll does not fall. They get the ball back. They miss a three. They get an offensive board. Howard gets another layup. And kind of in a flash, it goes from 60-55 to 60-59 with under a minute left. Did you guys feel the game slipping away, or were you still confident that you guys would make, the necessary plays to close it out?
I think we were certainly nervous throughout the whole game, but the whole game was like that.
Yeah.
So, we'd go up 4 to 6 points and say, hey, all right, this is time to make a break. Let's get it up to double digits and let's feel a little bit more comfortable here. And I think we had always kind of thought that, all right, the chances of it being a really close game, we're going to get to relax a little bit at some point and, enjoy the last minute and, hold the ball a little bit and this and that. And, they made some really great adjustments. Most of them I felt like were against me, and I had to really adjust. I think they switched up their lineup so that I had to guard, a guard who hit, more of a guard kind of player who hit a couple of threes, kind of, because I wasn't used to guarding out there. They did a lot of different variations of ball screens. I mean, you can see it there at the end where, look, Gordon was phenomenal. He was getting by most guys one-on-one. And so there was a lot of help that I had to do. And we weren't rotating correctly. And you'd see Howard get a quick layup. But it was because they were drawing up such great plays where they would always have some sort of second thought where the guy who would usually rotate to that person needed to stay on somebody else because they had two options. And so we got a little confused there on our defense the last couple of possessions. They did a double ball screen, and, we all kind of separated and just had a couple communication failures at that point. So, kudos to them. They were extremely well run team, great players. And for us, I think we were confident based upon experience, but, those end couple of moments, it was like, oh, this happened again. All right, we're up 5. We thought we were going to do, and then we didn't hit a shot. And then, I didn't get a couple offensive rebounds that I maybe thought I could get. And then, I kicked the ball out of bounds on one and, when there was a scramble, so they got the possession back again. And it felt like there was like 8 possessions in a row we had to hang on. I mean, also both Lance and I had 4 fouls, with like 10 to 12 minutes to go, and we had to play. So, we did kind of feel like we were on the edge there a little bit. And they made great adjustments by the end of the game. So, I think that we felt confident, but it was a hard game.
Yeah. Well, then, going into some of those plays that you just talked about, Singler, then the next few plays, Singler gets a good look, a little bit of a fadeaway that rims out. There's a scrum, like you said, ball goes off your foot, falling possession. They make a great play and they drive to a wide open 3, but you make one of the, doesn't end up in the box score kind of play, but you deflect it and the ball goes out of bounds in the corner, which, as anyone who's played basketball knows, that's the worst place to take the ball in bounds. And with you guarding the inbounds play, you force them to burn their last timeout with 13 seconds left. So kind of take us through those, the Singler missed shot, the deflection, and then kind of forcing them to burn their last timeout.
Yeah, it's funny because, I go back and I watch this stuff, and I was never the type of player like John who could remember every play of a game. Like, give me something weird, nerdy about history, I could tell you everything about that. But I semi-black out in games where, like, I don't remember specific things that often. I certainly can't give you, like, a play-by-play like John. Like, I don't have that inner basketball monologue like in Love and Basketball where, she's in her head the whole time. I need to do this and this. I'm just kind of winging it. And so for me, it was funny. We got that deflection. And then, I let the ball go out of bounds. No one comes up. He's like, why didn't you grab it? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just going here. So, for me, I go back and I watch those last couple minutes and, there were some, certainly good plays that were made, but there was a lot of little mistakes that I thought, could have gone, a little bit more. I could have done a better job, but, that end of the game with I wasn't the strategist where I was like, oh, I need to get them to call this timeout. I didn't know how many timeouts they had, so like, it's just not. Yeah, and look, that's been it's just not my number one thing. So,
Yeah.
I think that end of the game was just more instinct at that point. And we had built that up for a while, and for me, it just, especially, that last play against Gordon shooting it,
Yeah.
was, look, luckily there was only 3 seconds left on the clock and the ball bounced my way again. So there was like a lot of luck, obviously, that we put ourselves into that situation. I also look back and I looked, there's a couple times where, because they had Howard out, like I couldn't find him to box out. And so I'm like looking around, and then all of a sudden they get a rebound. And so there's little things you go and second guess yourself, but you try to do more good things than bad things.
Yeah.
And, that's what ended up happening.
Well, going back to that Hayward shot, you had an incredible contest as, Singler kind of, almost like passed him along to you. And then you came, made the great contest, shot hits back iron. You grabbed the rebound with 3.5 seconds left. When the ball went up, what did you honestly think? Did you think, shit, this ball's going in, or, no way he's making this? I'm right there.
Yeah, well, I think it was my biggest fear that, like, what would have happened the last 2 plays would happen, which is, there's some sort of ball screen mismatch, and then he kicks it off to Howard and they get an easy bucket, and it's my guy that scores, even though it wasn't, my rotation kind of thing. But I knew that after the last play that Gordon was going to be the one shooting it, so that might have went out of bounds. But after that, with the amount of time that was left, we're like, all right, they're not going to risk some extra pass. He's going to shoot it. And so, it had always, the last 2 plays had been either me on ball screen outside or me having to help the drive, on the drive for Gordon, because he was getting past guys. And so, and then we wouldn't rotate quickly. So, fortunately, this one was just, hey, if he gets into the lane, make it as hard as possible and don't foul him. So, which,
mission
had been a
accomplished.
problem for me in the past. So,
so you get the ball, you go to the line to shoot 2, you're up 1 with 3.5 seconds left. That moment, that arena, that pressure. I mean, it's literally the biggest.
85% Butler, by the way.
Yeah, and literally
at that point, they definitely were Butler, because it was like they were coming back,
Yeah,
so
Cinderella, yeah, totally. Yeah. And so you have literally the biggest shot of your career on the free throw line. What's going through your head as you take the first free throw?
I told you I blacked out. So. No, it's funny though. Like, you can see, like, not only was I like not used to that, like I started getting used to bigger game time situations, but like I hadn't been, there weren't really, from the Maryland game, there weren't, besides maybe the next Maryland game, there weren't really, end of shot free throws kind of situations that we had been in. So I hadn't been in it. And it's funny, I went back and watched that, and my face and or body language as soon as I get like that rebound that I'm fouled and I'm realizing that I'm shooting free throws is like, I drop the ball and I'm like, I will walk 90 feet to the free throw line, and I'm the one. All right, let's go. So, but at that point it's funny because, if I hadn't had the, string of games that I had and felt like I was in the zone a little bit more, which I hadn't felt my whole career until the last, part of the season. I wasn't really thinking about much, besides, hey, this is the next step that I have to do. All right. We're not winning yet. Like, I got to go up and I got to knock them down and we'll go from there. So, I get up there and take the first 2 dribbles and knock it down. And I'm a little too excited for making one. I think I give like a
you gave a big,
a
big one of these.
I'm like, act like you've been there before, Brian. I hadn't. So
you hadn't.
And so, yeah, like 3.6 seconds left. I am, as I said, I'm in the zone. And so I am not paying attention to anything besides this free throw. And then, what I remember in my head is I thought it was more obvious, but you go back and look at the tape and I barely looked over. And John, I think, whispers something to me and says, "Hey, Zoobs, look at coach." And so I look at John and I look over and it's literally just like my eyes move to the right for a split second. I guess I saw him say miss it. And so I'm blindly following at this point. Never intentionally missed a shot before in my life. I've missed a lot of intentional, like unintentional ones. But I mean, I think I didn't even know my free throw percentage, but I go back and I'm 55% for the tournament or the year. So, I guess it was a really good miss because it hit and then it bounced up and, but of course, like I almost pulled a previous Brian where I like rush up and like try to grab it or something. And I almost, foul Gordon.
You almost foul, yeah.
I almost fouled Gordon. Luckily, I pulled myself back and, just body him up a little bit, which again, an unintentional good thing that I certainly hadn't planned to like delay him like an extra second. And then I'm running along and I see Kyle get absolutely murdered by a screen.
Bulldoze.
And by the time that shot goes up, I'm on the free throw line of the best. So I'm the closest one in the world to that shot. And holy crap, it looked good.
Yeah. What are you thinking as the ball's going through the air?
I mean, I wasn't fully thinking of the consequences of everything, but only after, I finished, was I like, holy crap, I would have been a basketball pariah if that had went in. Because look, of how much sports science and questioning that last decision to miss it kind of was, we can go over that, 1,000 times. But at the end of the day, it would have been, me on the free throw line missing a shot, and then they make the best shot in college basketball history almost to that point, maybe until, Villanova's, later in 2016. And, so, I think for quite some time, I woke up in night terrors thinking about the idea that it went in. And my parents and I have had a couple of conversations, maybe after a couple of glasses of wine, where it's like, hey guys, you would have been on a suicide watch if that thing had went in, because that would have been like the appropriate cap on my Duke career based upon how it had went at that point. I guess, it's like all things have an equal and opposite reaction, where it's like how horrible my original career was there to where we got to, was the universe kind of evening things out for me. But yeah, that was, that I can't even, that one would have been horrible.
Yeah. So what did it feel like? I mean, when the ball finally goes backboard, rim, bounces off, your hands are on your head in disbelief. It's an iconic image from that 2010 title. I mean, as you're running down, go grab someone to hug, just like, what did it feel like? Just the rush of emotion and just like, holy crap, we actually did it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was more relief than it was joy in the moment. I had such a stressful career there. And, for me, it was validated. Look, it felt like I had finally gotten there. I had finally did it. I could prove everybody wrong. And, and then the other joy was just with my teammates, how much crap we had been through as, the 4 or 5 guys, especially the older guys, of how much crap we'd been through in the press, of having to deal with the fact that UNC was better than us the first couple years, and that we not only were they better than us, but we were pretty mediocre the first couple years. And, you had that history of all the Duke guys that you have to kind of live up to. And we were for a while like, hey, this is the end of K's career because these guys have been so bad. And, I think a lot of that happened because of the confidence that we didn't get the first couple years. I mean, the class was really, it was a great class. Lance, John, G, and myself. I mean, it was a phenomenal class.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that, we were on that era. We were the last real era of those kind of older players at big top 10 schools that were playing that saw both. We saw the 4-year players earlier in our career, and then right after us, it was Kyrie. And so, started a whole new, Kentucky had already kind of been doing it. Lucky that, West Virginia knocked them off because you go back and look at their roster now.
Yeah.
And, look, I think I would have done fine, but, Boogie was a load. And so, it would have been really tough. But, look, if things line up for the right reason, and I tend to think that, my favorite quote to my college careers was the Winston Churchill one, saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. And, that was the only thing that really got me through. And, it made it all worth it.
Yeah. And it was your birthday on top of that. So,
yeah,
give us a moment. Give us a moment from that night. Yeah. That's cemented in your memory forever. I know it was arguably the greatest night of my life. Winning that championship my senior year, watching you guys do that. So, but yeah, what was that like?
Couple of stories probably can't tell, but
you can tell them. You can tell them. Don't worry about it.
I won't name a couple names, but I think one of the coolest things was just, look, we hadn't won in 10 years, right? So, the level of involvement and people that were there. Indy is such a great city for it because you're all downtown. You're all kind of on top of each other. So going back to the team hotel and just I had never really experienced it before, but just having so many people who from all walks of life, Duke fans, Duke grads, CEOs of major companies, just everybody there, just absolutely euphoric. And, because of especially because of the struggles and how the game went and all that. And then, we had a lot of the guys, back. So, we had, Battier, we had Dunleavy, Jason Williams, all those guys. And, I never really hung out with those guys. They're heroes of mine. But, all of a sudden we were the guys, and then we'd go up and they were all hanging in a couple of the hotel rooms, play a little beer pong. We're riding such a high. I think me and Jordan Davidson beat Dunleavy and Battier. And so, just felt like one of the moments that, things were going right for me. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so after the season, and your career at Duke and your college career at Duke, you get a shot to play with the Nets. But you're cut before the year begins. What was the hardest part about, trying to carve out a role in the NBA, but then ultimately, kind of, you didn't make the team, and then not long after that, you decided to step away from pursuing basketball professionally. So kind of what was the Nets experience like, but then also what ultimately led to your decision to kind of decide it was the right time to hang them up?
Yeah. So until, that run kind of my senior year, had no concept that I was going to be playing. Maybe I could bounce around Europe or something, at that point. But, I had got invited to the Portsmouth Invitational, pretty last minute after I was playing pretty well, which is a, kind of pro-am kind of thing. But I was so exhausted from the national championship game that I decided not to go because it would have been like a 4-hour drive, up there. And, my legs were just absolutely shot. Maybe I should have done it, maybe. But, I felt like I had gotten some, good attention. I signed with Arn Tellem and his group, Wasserman, out in LA, went out there to work out in Santa Monica. Just my whole career kind of, felt like injuries were always plaguing me. So I did a workout where they had a new trainer and they had me doing burpees. And so I should not be doing burpees. And so I think I compressed something in my back. And so my back got a little bit hurt out there. And then, I got back from it, but then, did well on workouts, across the board. Didn't really expect to get drafted, but, this is where like kind of the politics and making the right decisions for stuff, kind of come into play with the NBA because, Rod Thorne was the, GM of the Nets at the time, and, Prokhorov had just bought them. So, they offered me some money to sign with them, which my agents thought that it, showed good commitment. But the other decision was, Doug Collins had just become the coach of the Sixers. And so I didn't really know him that much, but, it probably would have served me better to sign with the Sixers because I would have been playing behind like Spencer Hawes instead of Brook Lopez and getting a little bit more time. Doug would have looked out for me a little bit more. I mean, Rod Thorne literally, as soon as he signed me or did that, left for the Sixers. And so I had already signed with the Nets. They brought a new coach in, had a kind of mishmash of players, were kind of figuring their stuff out. And then, look, I triggered my back again. So, something slipped again, so while I thought I was doing well, I didn't play in anything, and I was kind of like the 16th guy, and it made it pretty easy to, cut me because there was only 15. So, I kind of then, got a couple epidurals for my back, didn't really take, decided to go get back surgery, had a microdiscectomy, I had nerve pain down into my left leg. And so spent 3 to 4 months recovering from that, then started training again. And then one day in the gym, I was playing one-on-one with a younger 7-footer who was in college with that same trainer that I mentioned earlier. And I did a spin move and just felt something in my back, and I walked off the court and never played again. So I just was just like, I'm done. I'm done with rehab. I'm done with injuries. I'm not going to be able to walk by the time I'm 30. Like, this is just not me. This is not fun for me. Looking back, maybe I would have approached it a little bit of a different way, but, I was just done. And I was happy with how my, college career had ended and looking to move on to the next thing. So,
yeah. Well, and I mean, kudos to you. You always had something to fall back on, which is your brain. You've always been incredibly bright guy, and, straight A's and all that. So kind of leading into that, what are you up to now? What did kind of those first few years after you hung them up, what did that look like? And then what are you up to now? And then also when you look back on, how do you look back on basketball's role in your life today and how that set you up for the success that you're experiencing now?
Yeah, look, I'd say the thing that's most similar is the idea of not knowing anything. And so in terms of your career, so when I first started in basketball, I didn't know certain levels. I thought I maybe did. I didn't know how good people would be. And, as you progress, you kind of see that next plateau and you're like, oh, this is, you start to get good at something. Then you see where the next level is. It's the same thing in business. So, for me, I spent time bouncing around, trying to figure out things, thinking that I knew stuff, trying to pursue anything I could. Because, between rehab and basketball, I didn't really have much time for, a specific, like an internship in college. I didn't have time to take the courses that I really wanted because they were, which is one of my gripes, is that I did 2 years of econ at Duke and busted my ass my first 2 years. And then was kind of told, hey, the capstone course, your junior year, which you need to graduate with an econ major, that's during practice hours. So you're going to need to change your major. So, I was forced to change my major to history, which was my minor at that time. And so, look, I bounced around trying to figure out a bunch of different stuff. I started a cream puff business because I just didn't want to work for anybody. I ended up running that for a little while. And then I was, starting to do some, house flipping and small apartment investing in the area where I grew up, Cherry Hill, Haddonfield. Realized I wanted to learn it at a higher level. So I got hooked up with a Duke guy who was, on the board, who was, former CEO of Cushman & Wakefield, which is a big firm in New York. Ended up, being a broker there for a while, going to school at night, learning real estate development and finance, and get my master's at NYU, and then just kind of started jumping in back in Philly, doing that. And now I do it in Philly and South Jersey Shore, build, multifamily apartment buildings, luxury shore homes. And so we've been progressing with that for the last almost 10 years now, and it's been great, and the business is growing. And but you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's a process, I know how much athletes struggle when they finish. Fortunately, what I am not enjoying, but what I have felt has been good for me now is that, a lot of guys who have made decent money in Europe or, in the league a little bit are now, we're 37, I'm 37 now, are coming back or in the last 5 years trying to figure out what the heck they want to do with the rest of their life. Maybe they made life-changing money, but most likely they didn't. And, what do I spend my time on? What do I feel valuable in? What do I feel like I'm good at again? And that was my frustration, was when you stop playing basketball, you start at the beginning again.
Mm-hmm.
And, not realizing that, look, you start with a little bit of leg up because of, relationships and, that, but nobody really knows how to take advantage of those to the right, degree when they're first starting. And so, now, I'm in the position where I feel really good about, the skill set that I built, the business that I built, and I'm at the beginning of my career, and I could do real estate development for the rest of my life. Because even if I'm retired, I could do 1 or 2 deals here and there. And, every year I get better, every year deals get bigger and, more profitable. And, it feels good to be good at something. And so, that's been really enjoyable. And I feel like it's ultimately going to be better for me because, I don't know what I would do coming back at 35 or 32 and I get an internship and I have to kind of restart. I've spent the last 15 years getting to the point where I am now, eating that for 15 years when you're maybe in your mid 30s and have a family, and restarting is very, very difficult, if not impossible. And so, that's, a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
building that real estate empire.
One brick at a time.
One brick at a time. All right. So here we got a few closing questions, recurring questions on Still Got It. The first one it's called Cameron Confessionals. So it's a recurring segment where we ask our guests to take us inside the walls of Cameron Indoor Stadium. So what's a story that you feel comfortable sharing? One of those locker room laughs, humiliating consequences, or hidden memories that only the Brotherhood knows?
Yeah, it's probably been said a few times, but one of my most memorable ones was either freshman or sophomore year, losing 2 games in the ACC in a row, I think, and walking into the locker room for practice the next day, and all the lockers are empty. The assistant coaches, a couple of them are sitting in a couple of lockers, and all of our stuff from our lockers is just in a giant pile on the floor there. And the coaches say, find some shoes and head down to the visitors' locker room. So I searched through for my size 18 shoes and my ankle braces and my special clamshell that I guess they threw in there as well, that, and head down to the other thing. And I just see these like Champs Sports pennies, like hanging up in the on the locker room. And, the first thing is like, hey, the manager's telling us, hey, you're supposed to wear these today. And then, I put them on. And, the biggest one they had, I think my compression shorts were like 8 inches longer than those things were. And like the penny was skin tight on me. And so
You're
I
wearing a
walk out there,
bikini.
and it's like supposed to be the most intense moment ever, where they say we don't deserve to wear the Duke name, and like all that. And like, from what obviously I've heard from other guys that they've done this at multiple occasions over the years. The playbook doesn't really evolve that much. And but we get out there onto the court, and it's just so funny. We look so ridiculous that it ends up being like a great practice, because like we're just laughing inside half the time because we look so ridiculous. And I think a lot of that is it's a theme throughout most of it. It's like it's so intense, but the little enjoyable moments of, like, even when you're sitting watching film in a practice room, you're next to your teammates, and your knees are touching, right? So the coach or one of the coaches will start screaming and doing something that's supposed to be really intense, and then something like slightly funny, or like they pause on like somebody's face, and then like you're like kind of kneeing your teammate to try to get them to laugh next to you before you die laughing to get them in trouble. And that builds the camaraderie that gets you to the end, where it's like, hey, we're in this. This is so hard that we can only do it together. And, have to have a little humor, have to have a little fun throughout, because otherwise you're not going to make it. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I can just imagine you basically wearing a bikini in practice.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those actually like backfired here and there, because I remember one practice, I forget the reason why, but they thought Gerald and Lance were lazy, or something happened where they made them wear full sweatsuits and put their jerseys and practice stuff on top of them during practice. And I think Gerald had like the best practice he ever had. So, and it was just because they made him so mad that he was like, all right, I'll finally try, which unfortunately then reinforces their, sick ways of motivating us, because it actually worked. So, 1,000 moments like that.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so also one of our closing questions is a question that the late great Barbara Walters used to ask a lot of her guests, which is what is the philosophy, or what are the philosophies by which you live your life?
I think that as you get further in business, especially, you have a no assholes rule, where you just want to surround yourself with good people. Got super lucky with that at Duke. The rest of the world is not like that. So finding a core group of guys, it was kind of the ultimate filter that brought guys to Duke, right? And you just happen to get lucky that everybody was good dude and had good families, and was there with you, and had your back on stuff. But it's not really, you have to build your own like that in the world. And I think that surrounding yourself with the best people you can, that have integrity, that want the best for you, is the best thing you can do. And I think that also one of the biggest lessons that you can apply is that just next play mentality that Coach K preached, is that look, business and life is hard. And for me, often in my business, I don't know a solution to 5 problems that I have that day, but I know I'll figure it out because I have 1,000 times before. And just showing up and making sure that you have that mentality of, I figured it out before, I'm going to keep going. If I put the work in, good things will happen. And doing that and surrounding yourself with good people is the best way to do it.
I love it. Well said. All right. So Brian Zoubek, you've won high school state championships. You're an integral part of an NCAA championship, and now you're building a real estate empire up in the Northeast. So in any sense of the word, on or off the court, does Brian Zoubek still got it?
I think I still got it.
Yeah, still got it. Well, there you have it. Well,
I mean, I did win the Ocean City, New Jersey Rec League Spring League last year.
my God.
So,
Boom.
and then it was the first
There you
time I
go.
played in like 12 years. And, yeah, oh man, it was rough, but I ended up winning. But I think I broke my wrist. I tore my hip. And so I'm done.
You're really
That's it. Ended on a championship.
add that
good,
banner,
you know?
add that banner or plaque or
got
right
a
next
t-shirt,
to the NCAA.
you know? So-
Yeah, put the
There you go.
t-shirt right next to the piece of net that you have cut from the NCAA championship.
Yeah, I think my body and the local firefighters and other guys that play in the league are very happy that I'm done. So,
Yeah. Well, there you got it. Brian Zoubek, thank you so much for being part of Still Got It. Really appreciate it, and be sure to reach out next time you come down to North Carolina.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, thanks, Zoobs.
Thank you, Brian.